Hello and welcome to the SBP podcast, the voice of mobile film. I'm Susie Botello. Episode 7 of the SBP podcast goes to New York to talk with Brian McLane. Brian shot a full-length feature film with a smartphone and a Hollywood cast. This episode also brings an exciting announcement about the International Mobile Film Festival in April 2018. If you're all ready, let's talk to Brian. Hey, Brian, thanks for being on the SBP podcast.
Hi, Susie. It is a pleasure. I'm so excited for this.
So I know that you are in New York, right?
I am.
And you've got an event happening that we're going to share with our listeners. That's coming. It's next week, right?
Thursday, December 7th, we are going to have the very first theatrical screening of The Killer's Requiem.
Wow. And that, by the way, is the name of your film, right?
Correct. The Killer's Requiem. It's about a man, a loving father, a devoted son who spirals into madness when he becomes the subject of a bet between God and the devil.
Wow. Now that sounds pretty interesting already. And I want you to tell a little more about that in a minute here. But before I do that, I'm pretty excited about something. I know you're excited about your film and everything, but I'm pretty excited on our end because I haven't made this announcement yet, but I think we'll just use this platform to make the announcement officially that, well, first of all, that you shot your film using an iPhone. And you're going to, although you're not competing in the International Mobile Film Festival in San Diego in April, you are going to screen it there. And you're going to do a talk as a workshop presentation. And you're going to show, and where you're going to inform attendees how to make a mobile film with Hollywood actors.
That's correct. I can't think of a better place. I mean, it's home for me because you're right. We shot this on an iPhone 6s, which has a 4K camera setting, which there's a lot of dynamics that need to be understood by filmmakers with respect to the limitations as well as the advantages, when there are many. But it was shot entirely on an iPhone 6s, and we're just ecstatic about the results and how it came out.
Tell us a little bit, just before we get into that, tell us a little bit about your background and how you actually even came to shoot an entire feature film, because that's a big deal, an entire feature film with your phone.
Well, that's a story in itself. Is that I am, first of all, a guitar player. I have no desire to be pounding scripts and knocking on doors in Hollywood or New York or wherever. And I think that that's first and foremost. I did it because I love it. It was a way for me to express myself. I had a video on MTV back in the late 80s. And, you can't, at a certain point, you move on. And so I started writing plays. And here in New York, we have the East Village, and we have other ways to be playwrights. And, there's certainly no shortage of ways to express yourself. But film was not really something that I was thinking about until I came up with the story quite by accident. And we just decided to do some test scenes featuring some friends and some family. This had nothing to do with, professional actors or trying to be famous. We literally were just trying out the 4K camera. And so we were staging these sort of like scenes, just doing some scene work. And the scene work was coming out terrific. And we had actors from the age of 8 until 80. And we sort of filled in, the storyline about this guy who has his daughter and his mother. And, we just started shooting. And, we just, after we would see one scene and how it came out, we would say, well, what about this? And we would add another part, and we would figure out what we didn't even have a screenplay. We just sort of kind of let the story write itself. And after 2 years, we had so much to work with that we were able to put together a feature, and it was coherent. And then all the other the post production aspects come into play. But the long and short of it is we had an idea, we had a story, and in this case, it was also a music feature. I wouldn't say it's a true musical because there's not really ensemble singing like you might see on Broadway.
Right.
But it's definitely a rock music film.
How did
And
how did that aspect of it come to be, by the way?
that's a great question. And I'll tell you the truth is that when I started this project, it was really to have all of my music. As I said, I was a guitar player, so all of my songwriting, all of the music that I had written by myself, not collaborated. I played in many bands for many years and toured and recorded on different albums, but I wanted just the songs that I had written, some of the better ones, to be in one place. And I didn't want to make a CD, those are antiquated. And I, had my, tried my hand at playwriting and stuff, and had put on a couple of plays. And, I just instinctively said, well, what about having all my music and coming up with this idea for a story and put it together? And the opportunity to start filming scenes which the lyrics for the songs sort of meshed with the overall concept of a film. And I had been asked by a couple of Broadway producers to go ahead and workshop this as a theatrical piece, but I had no interest in the day-to-day grind of trying to get a play off the ground. First of all, there's not a lot of money in it. I think playwrights, even of the most successful plays, make maybe 5%. And not only that, but once the play is over, it's done. With film, it lives forever.
Yeah.
So I was focused on film from the beginning. And it was a home for my music, and it was a home for, my story ideas. And it was really about that in the beginning, was just to have it all in one place so that, whether or not it ever got distributed, the bottom line was that my daughter, my son, my family, and my friends, that, we'd always have this thing. And the fact is that it just started getting better and better and better. And, I started taking it to people and showing it to them. They're like, you may have something here. And then it just sort of snowballed from there. But the beginnings, had we started off saying, you know what, I've got a great idea for a script, and then tried to go raise the money, and then, dealing with SAG to get real actors, which is a whole nother thing, it never would have gotten made, because there's a million zillion people doing that. And we just sort of backed our way into it, even with SAG. And I think that was it. We just did it unconventionally. There was a certain amount of serendipity involved. I think it was just supposed to happen.
Well, one of the things, these aren't just any actors. In mobile filmmaking, we don't usually see many SAG actors, but these are, why don't you please name these actors, because it's pretty impressive, and I think some of the people listening are going to recognize some of these guys.
Well, we were incredibly fortunate. We got to start. We got Jean Beauvoir, who is a rock legend. When you have a guy that turns down Prince to be his bass player,
Wow.
you have someone. Jean played. He cut his teeth with as one of the members of the very famous punk band, the Plasmatics. And then he went on to write for Kiss and the Ramones and Bruce Springsteen's E Street Band. I mean, he's been on basically about as high a level as you can go in music. Um, and I know Jean simply from through a mutual friend where we used to rehearse at the same rehearsal studio, and one simply, and this is something else that I would just say is, my mother always said, you have nothing to lose by asking because you have a 50% chance of a yes and a 50% chance of a no. So because of Facebook, somehow I got in touch with him and I said, hey, I'm doing this film. You may remember me from, the old studio, whatever. Are you interested? And he's doing stuff all the time, flying here and there. But, it's one thing, all rock stars and rock musicians, they want to be actors, and all actors, they want to be rock stars. And so we were very fortunate to get Jean very early on interested in the concept. And he did the soundtracks for Stallone's, different movies for, 20, 30 years of this. So he knows the business, and he was very helpful in terms of also guiding, how the production went. So he was a big get. Also, the second biggest get was Lloyd Kaufman, who everybody knows from Trauma. Even the other day, we were having the movie poster finalized, and someone said, "Wait a second, is that Lloyd Kaufman, like as in Trauma?" And I've gotten that maybe 50 times. People have said to me, "Lloyd Kaufman is in this film," and I said, "Yeah." Lloyd did Toxic Avenger, Class of Nukem High, a million
And
other films.
the funny thing is, see, it is a small world, isn't it? Because I met him a few years ago here in San Diego around one of the Comic Cons here at an event that was not a part of Comic Con, but at an event that was going on the side. I met him and his wife, and I told him about my film festival.
Yeah, and you know what? He knows about it now. That's for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, Pat, his wife Pat, was the New York State Film Commissioner for like 20 years.
Wow.
So these people, they know film. I mean, Lloyd, started off, I don't know, back, with I think like Rocky and Saturday Night Fever and The Karate Kid.
Yeah.
And so that's how far back he goes. And he knows filmmaking and got a huge reach. But, a lot of the stuff that he did, he just did cameos. In this, he has a serious dramatic role. And he's got a big part. And, Lloyd in the beginning was like, no problem, Brian. I actually interviewed Lloyd. I had a cable show on Manhattan Neighborhood Network, a public access show back in the early 2000s. And he had just come out with a book called Make Your Own Damn Movie. And so I interviewed him, just much like, we're doing now, on my cable show. And, we've been in touch ever since. And when I said, I've got this part of this, a retired detective, would you be interested? And he said, yeah. So getting Lloyd was huge. And then we got Tim Russ from Star Trek Voyager and, a lot of other films and TV shows. And, Tim is fantastic. I mean, the guy is he's not just, he's just like the most professional person. He's all business, but he's so approachable. And he has seen it, going back from Star Trek and all the films. He goes back to doing Mel Brooks films. He was in, I think, Spaceballs. He's just a professional, and you get the straight dope. Like he'll tell you, that's too low light. You can't use that. You don't. His big thing was Tim. And that's the same thing with, by the way, all of these people. They would help me with the actual sort of, this is what you need to do. And Tim's whole thing was, look, if they are not absolutely, critical to the storyline, get rid of it. Because his whole thing is, you want to keep it as close as possible to moving the story along and not getting, off on tangents. And in fact, one of the earlier rough cuts, must have been over 2 hours. Now we have it down to like 89 minutes. And so, Tim has been a friend from the beginning. And, he agreed to be in the film. I was very lucky to catch them at the Paradise City Comic-Con, both Lloyd and Tim at the same time. So, some of the scenes that we got with them, and let me tell you, we did those scenes with Tim and Lloyd in between events that they had to be at. So we knocked that out in like an hour, an
Wow.
hour and a half. We got 3 different locations and sets, all within, walking distance of the hotel. And it was, and that's what you do. You just do it, And who else we had? George Hardy from Troll 2 and Best Worst Movie. George is probably best known to people as the dentist who, wanted to be an actor. Now he's like this icon, and a few others. We're just incredibly lucky to get real names. You look at these films on Redbox or maybe on Netflix or some other outlets, and you're like, I never heard of any of these people. And the distributors who were coming after me, they were like, we've done this and we've done that, and look at our library. We want to take you to the film market. And I'd say, yeah, it looks like you've done a lot of stuff, but I haven't heard of any of these people. And my cast is better than anything that you've got. And so, all I can say is somehow we were able to just sort of snowball it from the beginning and just keep making it better and better. And in the beginning, people were just like, well, it's Brian, we'll give him the benefit of the doubt, until it just got more and more real. And then people started saying, I think I want to be a part of this, because you never know what can happen. And we as fans know what happened, not at all putting myself in this category, but you never know when you have a Blair Witch or El Mariachi or a bunch of other films that were made for like nothing. And the bottom line is, you do it because you love it. You do it and you get it done any way you can. You don't quit. You just keep going. But, you can't be an introvert. You can't just, there's a part of the filmmaking business where you have to get out there. You have to, let your pride go, and you've got to, go ahead and ask. And somehow we were able to convince people that this is something unique. It's the vanguard of what's coming, and they got in.
Yeah, no, it's an amazing cast. And I know when I first saw the film, I was like, wait, I know this guy. I know this guy. I know that guy. And actually, you even looked familiar.
Well, I had a couple of brushes with fame, but I'm hoping that that people just that they look at the characters in this story and that they buy in. The fact that it was shot on an iPhone, I think people will quickly forget, because the story is so engaging and the acting's so great. The one thing that I wanted, but ultimately I couldn't afford because I just didn't know people well enough, was some more female stars. And so I had to rely on people close to me that came in and did these parts. And you know what? They knocked it out of the park. These are first-time actresses, and they hit home runs. And so I'm not sure if they're going to pursue acting or whatever, but they blew me away. But the next one that we're doing, we have some actresses on board already, and we'll be announcing that. We're doing this again. You think I would have learned my lesson, but it's like an addiction. You just have to do it.
Yeah. Well, and there's two things. I do want you to talk about how you're doing this next project, of course, because it's pretty cool. But there's one actor in the film that plays your mom. I hope she does pursue this as a career. She was excellent. Who was that?
That's actually my mother. And you know what? I've heard it over and over again that people are blown away. She's coming to New York for the screening, and it's her big moment, because, at a certain point, I have to, I'm also a son, and I love my mother, dearly. And I got her to be involved in this, from the beginning, because, I wanted to, be there for her in her time of grief. And then it just took off, and she just was able to repeatedly, simply because I think she felt comfortable with me. So when I would give her directions, no, do it again, not like this, do it like that, whatever, she just felt comfortable. She just wanted to get it over with. So she would wind up, whatever scene it was, she would wind up giving me what I needed. But at the end of the day, there's one scene in particular when she's been kicked out of the bridge club, and the main character Sonny is worried that she's retreating and kind of
Depressed.
hiding from the world, and
Yeah.
she just gets. He says, "Mom." I forget what the exact line is, like, "Mother, you can't sleep your life away," and she explodes on him. That raw emotion, she could summon it up, from there or tears. You're right. She just did an incredible job. I mean, I had some actresses that I had actually reached out to and actually had gotten some responses from, but the money that would have been required we didn't have. And we're talking about some big names like Meg Ryan, Susan Sarandon, and so forth. We just didn't
Wow.
have the money.
Yeah.
And there were some other actors who had taken notice, like Rutger Hauer, William Shatner, and that we were in touch with their agents for different parts. But again, we were shooting this on a shoestring budget. But they're all aware of us now, and hopefully for the next one, which is called Aliens versus Rockers, I don't know that we're necessarily going to be shooting it on an iPhone, but I think the company is certainly at this point off the ground, and people are taking us seriously.
Oh gosh. I mean, yeah, no, this movie is definitely entertaining, and it's for me it's one of the first times that I've sat through a complete feature film like this that's going to be a part of the my film festival, and just sat through it more than, 20 minutes, and it was incredible. And it again, it's a great story. I wanted to. I know we were talking about the music, but I think one of the questions a lot of the people I meet that I talk to about this have is about sound and syncing.
Well, yeah, again, there's a lot of things that you find out. First of all, when you're making a feature, it's not like a 10-minute short. And, the render times, we're doing this, it's a backpack production. In fact, I like to say that our entire movie studio fits in a piece of luggage, from tripods to gear to the laptop, obviously the phone. I mean, think about that for a second. The whole thing fits in a piece of luggage. Um, Now, I wish I had, in retrospect, an iMac, with much more processing power, but the render times can be quite long. And one of the issues that we're having is that the H.264 codec, it needs some a lot, not just some, a lot of extra attention and processing in order to make it display properly on a large screen. It looks great on your iPhone.
Yeah.
It looks great even on a laptop, and maybe even your big screen TV. But by I don't know, after we had gotten into like the 20th or 30th rough cut, we were editing to the big screen TV because the H.264 codec can only approximate, where a frame might land within a given shot. And unlike the ProRes codec, where wherever the frame is, that's where it's going to be, and whatever sound is associated with it's going to be. There's a lot of sliding with H.264, and that is going to be one of the biggest challenges that filmmakers who see their mobile, who want to make a film on a mobile device or on a smartphone, who are capturing their, even if it's 4K. It doesn't matter because of the fact that it's captured with H.264. It's going to be a problem. And so the way around that problem is you do all of your exports. You get your sound people on it to line everything up, but color has to be done before sound. Sound has to be the last step in the process, so your sound guy can slide things in and out of sync. And a lot of and one of the another one of the biggest issues is that because it's a mobile phone, we winged it. We didn't have permits, we didn't have insurance, we didn't ask for permission. If we needed to shoot in a nature preserve or on a beach, or in front of a police station or on train tracks, which by the way don't do because it's a felony.
Yeah.
Uh, we just did it, and we learned all these things as we went. But we just shot. That's it. You whip it out, and sometimes we had to ask somebody who was walking down the street, "Excuse me, sir, ma'am, can you do me a favor and just hold our camera up here against the light post while we shoot?" And people would say yes. People would be walking down the street and they would get involved, whether we needed, some background actors to stand under a street lamp or whatever it was. People were like, "Oh, okay." And,
That's so
you know,
awesome.
yeah, because again, what does the mobile, you have it in your pocket.
Yeah.
And there are certain tripods, again, you can tuck inside. I don't care if you're going to an amusement park, you're shooting in a motel. It doesn't matter. Your tripod is inside your coat pocket and your phone is in your back pocket. And you get everybody together and you're like, all right, guys, here's what's happening. He's walking down the hall. He's going to knock on the door and he's going to enter the room. And then, we move the camera inside the hotel room or whatever. But the point is that you're, and this dovetails, in fact, with the issues. If you're going to get real actors in SAG wants to know where the shoots are going to be, if their actors are being fed, when they showed up on set, do they have workers' comp and all that? And you know what? That's something that SAG is going to have to deal with. And in fact, that I've said to them in convincing them to clear the project, was is a whole nother thing. But the bottom line is, with mobile film, you just shoot because you don't know where a location. You may drive by a location and say, "Hey, you know what? There's the dumpster that we needed. Everybody stop and let's go shoot." You
Well,
don't know where the shoot is going to be.
that's one of the benefits, that you don't have to plan so much. And of course that happens in a lot of films too, where you're going, "Oh, that would be a great location for this one scene that we've got planned. So, we'll come back on Tuesday, we'll talk to them." And you go through that process where with a phone, right? You're just like exactly what you just said.
Well, yeah, I mean, if there was no coming back on Tuesday, though.
Right.
It was like we were in the car and I had the characters and we were like, let's look for a location. And you know what? Time after time, it was almost as if we were led to the place that we needed to be, an observatory on some beach, or wherever the location was that we needed. They somehow wound up, we'd wind up getting the shots that we needed. And to be, to be sure, there's a lot of stuff. We have so much extra footage that we have enough to make a pilot based on the same story, but the same characters and everything, but a totally different story that we couldn't even incorporate into the film because there was this sort of like gangster and mob element that we had incorporated in. And Tim Russ said, listen, man, you got the angel and demons thing going on. Forget about the gangster stuff. It's too much. So we've got all of this stuff that, we wound up, that we have on the side that may be something else. But the point is you shoot by the pound and you wind up sifting through it and you take the best and something, one director that really I should give him a credit in the film, a guy named David Hoken. He shot Barbed Wire with Pam Anderson and Most Wanted with it was Jamie Foxx, I think. He did several films, and he said, "You know what, Brian? The main thing that you need to have is coverage. Make sure that you get at least 3 angles of every single, in every single scene, you get at least 3 angles so that you can cut from one to the other if somebody flubs the line or if the light's not good." And so we learned that lesson, I would say about halfway through the film, and I would, impart that to your listeners is, there's all kinds of things, tips and tricks, and that I would be speaking about in the workshop that, they're going to learn and they're going to save a lot of time just by, basically the sort of the trial and error that I had to, go through. But, at the end of the day, you see a location. If you have the people and you say, "Can you get here?" You get there. Here's the scene. Sometimes you had dialogue, sometimes you didn't. But, you just do it, and somehow we came up with enough stuff that in post we were able to put together the story we wanted to tell.
So you basically had an iPhone and a MacBook.
That's it, and Final Cut Pro, and a
Right.
couple of plugins that are actually absolutely indispensable. Neat Video for noise reduction, compressor, um, which is for sort of uploading our dailies and stuff. But that's a whole nother thing that I would talk about in the workshop. I lost a lot of footage, because the 4K footage is so heavy
Yeah.
that you start recording and you're in the moment, and sometimes you forget to stop the recording, or sometimes you think you shot a scene but you never pressed record. I mean, it's endless. But at the end of the day, you have all this footage and it's heavy. And a laptop like my MacBook Retina, I was under the impression, this is what you need to get if you're going to shoot in 4K. But what they didn't tell me was, I think the max hard disk space that comes on the Retina, maybe a terabyte. I had 250 gigs because I just didn't know. Well, let me tell you, I've gone through so many drives. And by the way, you can only use Thunderbolt drives. Any kind of USB drive won't do it. It'll take forever. You need that big fat pipeline of a Thunderbolt.
Yeah.
And I've gone through several of those. Uh, is to make sure that you trim your clips before you put them into your folders. And that's another thing, is you have to have you really have to name your clips. You've got to have an organized structure as to what the different scenes are. Organization is going to save you a lot of time, and backing up everything to the cloud, either Amazon Cloud Drive, which is what I use, but I also use Dropbox. But you've got to back that stuff up because there's no way it'll all fit on your laptop. And if you're fortunate enough to have some sort of a desktop rig, or if you're editing in Premiere, good for you. If you have some kind of Avid or whatever, terrific, good for you. But for us, we had a laptop, we had an iPhone, and we had a tripod and some basic lighting, and that was about it. I would also definitely suggest getting a good stabilizer, because if you're thinking that your film is going to get shown theatrically or picked up, the
Oh, yeah.
quality control is so strict. There's no jumpy frames. If you see where the image warps even for a frame or two, you can forget it. I mean, I don't know whether it's Netflix or iTunes, what the standard is, because I'm still learning. But the bottom line is that they will come back on quality control and say at 24 minutes, 36 seconds, and 17 frames through 19 frames, you've got some shaky, jumpy frames. You got to get rid of it. Or they'll say, your ADRs are out of sync. It's one thing to go ahead and say, I want to make a mobile, a film on my mobile device. And certainly it's a lot easier to do that if you're doing it, 10 minutes or 20 minutes or something. But you know what? You're not going to be able to do a feature film and park it all on your laptop. It's just not going to happen. So you've got to really trim the footage, and you've got to make sure that you have it organized and back it all up to the cloud. You got to have a workflow.
Yeah. No, and you're right about the stabilizers, because what happens too is you don't see it when you're even on your laptop, you may not see it, but once you blow it up on the big screen, everything shows. All the shaking is really obvious, and the pixels and everything is it becomes more like naked.
Well, Tim would say, he was like, "Come on, man! Like this stuff looks." Tim is very, he's direct. Let's just say it like that.
Yeah.
Very helpful but direct. And he would say, like, "Nah, man, you have to redo this. It's just too low light. It's all the noise. There's too much noise." And so we actually had several scenes in the film where we had to reshoot, but we couldn't get the actors back, so we'd have to write a different way to get, whatever part of the plot needed to be, it needed to be achieved. in the storyline, and we have to reshoot it because it was too low light. And again, you remember, like, the iPhone, it's just not meant for low light. So you think, you're going into this bar, and it's dim, and you're at some booth, and you're trying to film a conversation between characters A and B and C or whatever, and you're looking at it on your iPhone. You're like, yeah, it looks great, but guess what? When you blow it up, it's unusable. And I can't tell you how many times I made that mistake. So having some kind of a little portable light kit, where you can make sure that you've got lighting, it's very important. But at the same time, a bar owner may come over and say, excuse me, we don't allow that here. And, that's it. That's the end of the shoot. So a lot of times we actually would, like we do a scene in a cigar bar or something. And I'd actually go up and say, hey, listen, we're shooting this, I guess you could call it a film, always be self-deprecating so that they don't feel threatened. Hey, we're shooting this thing. Do you mind? No, go ahead. Because, it would just make it better. So if they saw us setting up something on a tripod and people are having their cigars or whatever, they're like, why is this guy recording? But you know what? We did it anyway. And there were times where, I'm telling you, we had to hightail it, because people don't like being recorded. And, we might be in the Olive Garden or wherever else, and we would have to crop it in such a way where you can't see anybody's face, or it turned out we didn't use that footage. But the bottom line is that there's rights issues. You have to make sure you don't get any logos in there, people's faces, whatever. And all of that is antithetical in a way to what the mobile film sort of the promise of what mobile film is, which is you whip it out and you just you get what you can get. But there are certain things, you don't want to get sued. So you have to make sure you don't get people in it. Or if, somebody walks by or they're not getting out of the way, you got to wait till they leave. If, you look at something and you see, oh, we got this logo in there, we got to crop that out. At the end of the day, rights matter, and you're going to have to deal with that down the road. Same thing with color, by the way.
Yeah.
Um, when you look at something like Gotham, which is one of my favorite shows, I love that look, that sort of, steel blue kind of sci-fi look that they have. But if you look, the way they're able to achieve that is that the wardrobe person has them all wearing stuff that are either, that is blue, charcoal, black, brown. There's no yellow, pink, green, and so with mobile film, you don't have that. You just, you stumble upon a location, you have the actors, you go ahead and shoot. But that's going to come back to bite you in post, because when you try and get a uniform color scheme, you're going to have a lot of problems, because you can't comb out that color if people were wearing it. And so that's another thing. I think that, listen, if you are organized in a way that I wasn't, then, you would take into consideration, like, where are we shooting? This dark alley in Chinatown, it's blacks, it's brick, it's dark, and, there's some street lamps and there's a mist and whatever, great, especially if the cops don't come by and say, let me see your permit, but at the same time, you want to make sure that, see, in real films, you've got the film production manager who's overseeing some meeting between wardrobe and the cinematographer and the director of photography. Mobile film, you don't have any of that. But by planning these things, and that's what I'll talk about in my workshop, hey, you know what? You can avoid the problems you're going to have in post if you just take into consideration X, Y, and Z.
As far as locations are concerned, I mean, I've worked on some independent films where some of the gripes from, let's say, like a little restaurant that you want to shoot one scene on. The gripes is that, well, you're going to set up all your stuff and I'm going to have to shut down the restaurant for hours until you can get this done. And so you have to light it for the time of day. So usually if it's night, then okay, you can do that because you can do it very early in the morning before they open, but you're being disruptive. But with a mobile film, even if you used a couple of lights, you've got a smaller crew, it will take a lot less time, and you're not being so disruptive. You could maybe even get away with using the back of the restaurant or something like that. So you might get a little bit of a more lenient uh, restaurant owner or location that way.
Well, we dealt with it two different ways. Number one, don't tell them. We wouldn't bring any lights. We wouldn't bring anything. We just went to a table in the back, whatever. We stay out of the way, and we set up the tripod. And they think, oh well, they're tourists or
True
whatever. And we
gorilla.
just, yeah, totally guerrilla. We just went ahead and did it. And if they said stop or what are you doing, which by the way happened very rarely, we just, we just shot. The biggest problem again is lighting. So you'd have to choose a booth that, had some decent light. And then you just hope, for the best. And sometimes it just, when you look at it, it looks great on the phone, but when you look at it on the big screen, it's just the resolution isn't there.
Yeah.
And so we had, we had a lot of wins, but we had some losses too in that regard. The other way is, like I said, which is, we would go into a diner and say, hey, listen, we're making this film. It's an indie. Would you mind if we, you have this great 50s looking diner and it's just so cool. If we gave you credit, could you mind if we just, shot a scene here? And they'd be like, yeah, sounds great. And, so there's two ways you can do it. You can charm them. Or if you just think that, it just may be more trouble than it's worth, like, in a hotel lobby or something. I'm not going to worry about going to get the hotel manager and say, hey, listen, I want to do X, Y, and Z. No, you sit there on that couch, you sit there on that lounge, and let's shoot. And
Well,
you know what? I'm going to make it so you have no idea. Because if they can identify the location, you're going to have to get a property release. But no one can identify, if it's a medium shot, you can't really tell where it's at. No, you're good.
yeah, no, and the big corporations and things like that, they don't. You can't just ask
Oh,
the
you're done.
manager.
Don't even waste your time.
Yep.
It's a waste of time. That's and again, that's the whole thing. We had one we had one scene that we shot where we had to drag a body. We were in a nature preserve, and
Okay, now you're
uh,
getting fun.
yeah, the scene calls for the main character. He's got to get rid of some body parts. He's chopped up one of his victims, and he's going to dump it, in this nature preserve in this wetlands, for the alligators to come get. And so we waited, and there was, a lot of people come to this place to walk and run and photograph birds or whatever. But we waited until we had no one around. And so I said, all right, we set up the tripod. I'm like, am I in frame? All right, ready? 3, 2. And that's the whole, concept. 3, 2, go. And so I'm dragging this garbage bag, which is, supposedly full of body parts. And what happens? A jogger runs around the corner and he sees me, dragging this bag, and he takes off in the other direction. And I just think that they're going to go run and get the cops. So, we had to get out of there. But the bottom line is we got it done. The scene is in the film. And it just looks great. You see me running off, and that was real. you see the character after he dumps this thing over. And by the way, you're not supposed to. That's a huge fine.
Yeah.
But we went ahead and did it. But then I went with an umbrella and I grabbed the garbage bag, took it back, and there could have been an alligator in there. And there were so many times like that where I would climb like a rail car that was parked in some rail yard. And do a flip into I didn't even know it was in there on the other side. Thank God there was sand. But, you take a lot of chances.
Do we need to tell our listeners, like in those shows, do not try this at home?
You know what? I think, you may have just saved me a lawsuit. Yes, do not do this.
Everything we're telling you, do not do.
Do not do it. Make sure you investigate it. Make sure you get all the proper permits, and make sure you get all the insurance. And, then you'll be good to go, and you'll never get the film made. So that's it. You just, you know what, you got to do it. You certainly, you don't want to make you don't want anybody to get hurt. You don't want to inconvenience others. And you know what, when you're filming in public, there was one scene we did one of the songs on this bridge. It's in
Oh,
Delray Beach. It's a drawbridge because boats are going back and forth, and I'm in the middle of this causeway singing this song for this music video, and all these cars are stopping, and they're like, "Yeah, man, go do it." And the bridge is up, and there's like this line of cars on either side. But I had already started filming, and I wanted to get out of there, so I kept singing the song in the middle of this, in the middle of this street, and you have to have an element of crazy about you. If you think that it's going to go according to plan, you don't do this. There's just this sort of, you have to have a certain amount of, I don't know what's going to happen, but it's going to happen.
you gotta like. I mean, I think this is probably the third podcast interview that I've had where I have to point that out that filmmakers love challenges.
Well, I didn't know what I was getting into really when I started this. I really had no idea. And it's been a huge learning curve. There's so many things, from the equipment, and we've discussed, stabilization and light, to casting, you just having to deal with SAG, locations, insurance, permits, digital assets management, how you import your footage, organization of folders, backing everything up. And then you have to get into things like visual effects and sound and color. There's a lot. And what I would say is, make sure that you're really ready. It's one thing if you're going to do, it was funny. I was talking to a color guy and he was looking at our film and he was like, I can't believe what you did here. You did it took me 2 years just to do a 2-minute film. And here we are, let's be clear about that. If you're talking about a feature, it's a different animal.
Mm-hmm.
But some of the technical considerations are going to be the same.
Would you say the world is ready though to make more feature films? With
100%.
the
We're there.
Yeah.
We're there. And if you look at what's going on with Hollywood with all the social stuff and, that's one thing. But, I'll even go one further. No one's fooled. When someone says, oh, yeah, I got into Sundance or whatever, they have, I don't know, 13, 14,000 films that are submitted. And, a lot of them are documentaries and shorts and social issues, because that's sort of like their mission. We had an original story. We're not making Transformers 10. We're not doing a reboot of, Friends or something like that. We came up, that's another thing. If you have an original story that's a feature-length story, don't bother with Sundance. You're not getting in. No one's gonna be interested at Sundance because the Oprah Winfrey's and the George Clooney's and the studios have those festivals booked years in advance. So you want to look for festivals like maybe smaller festivals to start gauging, to get your work seen. It just happens to be that for me, that being that this was shot on a mobile film, I felt like that the International Mobile Film Festival was the natural place to debut our film.
Yeah. Well, it's definitely you can't get into this film festival unless you've shot it with a phone. But it is I don't know how to explain it, like endearing of people like you who are giving it your best shot, literally. I pun intended. Um, but yeah, I just started accepting feature films last year because I do agree with you. I think, you know, filmmakers like a challenge, and I think we're ready to see the films shot with phones go beyond shorts.
Well, for me, it was really, overreaching because not only was it a full full length feature film, with the sort of supernatural aspect, but it was a rock music film. So there's a soundtrack of, I don't know, 13 songs in it. And so we really went above and beyond, because we always had in our mind sort of like Rocky Horror as this kind of, what we were aiming at. But, for other filmmakers, it doesn't have to be so complex. You could have, three, four people, or it doesn't matter. It has to be about the story that you want to tell. It's people don't know this necessarily because we don't want to clobber them over the head with it. But our film is a faith-based film. That's another challenge it has. No one wants to hear about Jesus Christ or, redemption and all of that. The premise of the film is based around Romans 5:20. I'm not sure if I'm surprising you with this, but it's called the sufficient grace clause in the Bible. And it basically says that no matter how bad you are or bad you think you've been or, how awful you feel about the things you've done, God's grace beats whatever you've done. There's forgiveness and love wins out over sin every time. So now, no matter how bad this guy has been, because he's been affected, he's in the middle of this bet between God and the devil's trying to make him do all these bad things. It doesn't matter ultimately in the end because God's grace is going to win out. That was another thing that, there's like, I don't know, maybe a dozen points during the film where we were able to sort of reference scripture. And,
it's really subtle though.
That's you got it.
Mm-hmm.
We wanted it to be like Criminal Minds. First of all, there's cursing in the film, and so we actually were in touch with some pretty big ministries, and they're like, oh no, you have cursing in there, and you got to take that out. And we were like, I'm not going to curse now, but F no, because that's the whole point is we're not preaching to the people who have been saved, the high diddly hoes who go to church every Sunday. No, we're preaching to the not preaching at all, but we're basically tailoring our message to people. Saying, consider this. And we're not clobbering you over the head with it, but the bottom line is that at the end of the day, we have a message, and the message is that grace beats sin every time. And, you can take the information and do what you want with it, but we're not going to clobber you over the head with it. And most people, when they watch this, it's, this chaotic ride from the beginning to the end. And, it's, got this rock music in it. Oh no, and cursing and whatever, but that's what it is today. And it's all hands on deck when it comes to the message that we wanted to get out. And again, a lot of faith-based films stink. They're cheesy, they're corny, they're obvious and whatever. There have been several articles actually, in USA Today or on Fox News or whatever. And one of them in particular, you could probably Google it. It says, I think the headline was "Praying for Better Faith-Based Films," basically saying, these guys are getting these budgets and the films stink, because no one wants to hear you preach at me. You can tell me what the message is, but you know what, we wanted to make a good film, and, we had something to say, and, we'll let people judge in the end, whether or not, we were able to get that across.
It doesn't have like this, it's a religious film type of a feeling to it at all. Really, but it is a good story. And the one thing about great stories is I can't remember a great story that I've ever read or seen or watched or anything that doesn't have a message. So
exactly. If one of the things that I remember from the movie Lost, I think maybe it was Lost in Translation. I forget which one it was, but the point is your character has to transform. Your characters, the characters have to write the story. If you have good characters that are engaging and you're just like, you're hanging on what they say or do, that's the most important thing. And what I would say to anybody is tell the story you want to say and that you want to tell, and don't listen to anybody else. I mean, you can certainly, grab as much information as you can, but at the end of the day, if you've got an idea and you've got a phone, you're already there. Go ahead, make the movie that you want to make, tell the story you want to tell, and then I think that I'll be able to help, when it comes to some of the technical considerations.
Yeah, and the story in your film, along with your character, actually really evolves throughout the film. I mean, it's almost like a song. I guess you being a musician and a singer, you probably understand that, where it starts with one pace, and familiarity, and then it gets wild. It really does, and so it really keeps you captivated. Like, geez, where is this gonna go? Oh my gosh, I really liked it, and I think it's gonna be a really, really interesting film in our film festivals. So people are gonna have to come to the film festival and watch this and meet you um, at the film festival too, and they're gonna learn so much from you. I'm really excited.
I can't wait, because we need more people to take up the challenge, and I think they will, And if the fact that I've gotten this done, other people who are at least as creative as and resourceful as I am are going to do it as well.
Well, go ahead and before we end this, and let's play, unless you want to bring anything else up, which we will at the end bring up your event coming up. Um, it it's shout out time.
Well, thank you very much. I would say that there's three people, there's 60, 70 people that were involved in the film, but three in particular. Mark Franzblau, who came into my office and said, I don't know what you're going to do, but I believe in you. He got the ball rolling. So I suppose if we can blame anyone, it's him. Jamie Sheeran, who picked me up when I was at my lowest and kept me going and constantly reminded me that I was onto something. And then finally, Robin Zwirling, who she was like the cavalry coming over the hill at the end. Without them, we're not here talking about the Killer's Requiem.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay, we're gonna play a little game now, though. I have you heard about the 20-second shout out game?
I No, but I love surprises. That's what we do in mobile film. So go ahead.
All right, so um, let me call it out because now we're really gonna do this. It's a game. It's called shout out time. So I'm gonna give you 20 seconds to rattle off uh, as many shout outs. This could be people, whatever you want. But I'm going to give you 20 seconds to do it. So whatever you can accomplish in 20 seconds, great. If not, too bad. You ready for this?
I'm ready.
Okay. Get set and go.
Uh, I would just like to thank my mother and my daughter, Sophia McLane, my daughter, and my mom, Carol August, because they made the film with me. As I said, Mark Franzblau, Jamie Sheeran, and Robin Zwirling. This film doesn't get done without them. My band, End of the Universe,
Oh.
Jason Udoff, Charlie Roth, T. Motts. They're the best.
It's over.
I hope I got it in under the wire there.
You one of the things we also do, and by the way, I forgot you had your daughter in the film too. That was
Sophia,
nice.
8 years old.
Gosh, 8 years old, really?
She's got it. She would take direction. I'd say, do it like this, over and over again. And she just has that natural thing.
Gosh. So
She's
your
talented.
mom and your daughter.
Both of them, yep.
Yeah, and I have to tell our listeners too, you have a great voice as a singer. I
Well,
mean,
thank you.
so a lot of times, people are going, "Oh, it's a musical." You know what I'm saying? But you do have a great voice. I think you were telling me a little bit about how you got your voice.
Yeah, my dad's an opera singer, and I just inherited it. And I just, he was in opera. Both my grandfathers were famous musicians. Ralph McLane was like the Babe Ruth of classical clarinet. Jan August on my mom's side, played for presidents. And so I come from that sort of pedigree, and I just inherited it. I just did it with rock.
Wow. Yeah, no, it's amazing. Um, well, I think we're gonna have to end this podcast show, but we do have a special question for you at the end here, for our Patreon page, so that our patrons who subscribe will have a bonus to where we'll have you answer and give them some really cool tips on something that's going to be a surprise for them. But go ahead and spell out your. We'll add links and we'll uh, add the trailer to the article link as
Awesome.
well. And if you want to mouth off your website or anything like that, for those who can't stand reading.
Well, thekillersrequiem.com has a lot of information about the project, but where you're going to get the news is on our Facebook page, because that's where people are sort of migrating to. So there's no reason to send them to the website back to Facebook, and that's just facebook.com/Palm Isles Pictures. Isles is like an aisle seat, so it's PALMAISLES Pictures. We're getting the ball rolling here. We've got another pilot that we're doing that's a travel show, which also was shot on the iPhone.
Mm.
And then we also have, like I said, Aliens versus Rockers, which we're planning on shooting next year in the Mojave Desert. And so, yeah, we're getting a little film production company off the ground.
Awesome.
And again, you don't drink the champagne unless you take the risks, and that's what I would say to everybody. Go ahead, take the risk. Just be prepared to suffer, but
I might just
it's
have to
worth it.
quote you on that one.
Please do.
That's
That's what everybody
awesome.
needs to know.
Yeah, every star has a great quote, right? Oh, speaking of star, you're going to have this event. Again, why don't you just give everyone a little more info on that?
Oh, it's just a private screening. We're going to debut the film at the International Mobile Film Festival in San Diego in April of 2018. This is an event actually that's really geared towards, investors for the upcoming, what we hope will be the upcoming feature. See, I self-financed this for the most part, along with some of the people that I just mentioned, Jamie, Mark, and Robin. But I can't do that again. And so we're showing people basically, yes, we shot it on a phone, but look what we did. And so basically everything that we learned from this experience, including, we didn't really talk about SAG. I will say this, that they did something highly, highly, highly unusual. Actually, I don't know if they've ever done it, but they
Ooh,
cleared our film
save
after
save
it had,
save that. Save that. We're
yeah.
gonna talk about that. We're gonna mention that on the Patreon page.
Okay, sure. Well, yeah, we're gonna basically be having this event on Thursday, December 7th, 2017, and it's for insiders that were involved or close to the production, getting made and getting it off the ground. About 65, 70 people, and then there's going to be a big after party,
Cool.
and then we go back to doing what we do best, which is taking care of the nitty gritty. We have to deal with the errors and omissions insurance, as I said, about rights, a lot of the publishing stuff. But as far as the film being finished, that'll be done.
Nice. All right. Well, let's say goodbye to everybody.
Bye, everybody. Remember, get your phone, get ready to shoot, and just do it. You can do it.
We want to thank Brian McLane for a great interview. The trailer for his feature film will be listed in the podcast notes, along with other information and The film itself will be featured in the International Mobile Film Festival in San Diego on April 2018. Go to our website at www.internationalmobilefilmfestival.com to stay up to date. And don't forget, our Patreon page is hosting a bonus podcast with our patrons, which you can only listen to as a subscriber. Brian shares great advice for mobile and traditional filmmakers there at www.patreon.com/SBP podcast.